welcome to the deep dive. If you're tuning in, chances are you're pretty familiar with the usual story about artificial intelligence. You know, the one about existential risk, Skynet, rogue AI, that whole paperclip maximizer idea, where this superintelligence, just trying to make paperclips efficiently, decides, well, the whole planet needs to become paperclips. It's a pretty scary picture.
It really is. It's that whole alignment challenge narrative, isn't it? Focusing on how we control it, how we stop the worst from happening. And look, those risks are definitely worth talking about. But if we only focus on the dystopian stuff, well, we kind of miss the huge positive changes that are actually happening already, or things that are getting really close.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to flip that script completely. Yeah. Our mission here is to really dive into the optimistic side, the visions we found in the source material. We're looking purely at the hopeful futures AI might bring, how this tech is actually being built to, improve our well-being, help the planet, boost creativity, even maybe create more trustworthy ways for society to function.
And the amount of money going into this, it's staggering. Trillions of dollars in AI research and development. That's not just about cool tech breakthroughs. It holds the promise of, a systemic lift in living standards for literally billions of people. So to really get that potential, we need to move past the abstract fears, and look at the actual tangible stuff, starting with maybe the most personal area.
Our health, right? Health. And the power of these deep neural networks, DNNs, it's their ability to handle really messy, huge data sets, right? The kind that just swamp older methods. Yeah. And when you apply that to medicine, you get this incredible predictive power, forecasting illness based on data we already have with pretty amazing accuracy.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how efficient it can be. There was one big study we looked at, tracked almost 300,000 patients for, 8 years, looking specifically for chronic kidney disease. Now, what do you think they needed? Hundreds of complex tests, fancy gene sequencing.
Well, yeah, you'd think for something like kidney disease, you'd need really specific detailed markers, wouldn't you? The body is complex.
That's the amazing part. The DNN got really good predictive accuracy using just 18 common lab tests, stuff that's widely available. The AI was just incredibly good at spotting these subtle links, these non-obvious connections between those 18 things. Things a human doctor might just miss, but together they paint a pretty clear picture of future risk.
18 tests. That's quite something. And it's not just one disease, is it? The sources show this scales up. You mentioned places like Mount Sinai using electronic health records, EHRs, from over 1.3 million patients. And they weren't just predicting one thing. They got really high accuracy forecasting 5 different conditions.
Exactly. Diabetes, dementia, shingles, sickle cell anemia, even attention deficit disorder. That multi-disease forecasting, that's where these DNNs really show their power. They're not just confirming one diagnosis. They're building these complex risk profiles from a patient's whole history. It's moving us away from just reacting to sickness towards genuinely trying to prevent it before it even starts. Preemptive care.
Okay, but let's pause here for a second. We need to be critical, like we always are in these deep dives. The sources themselves bring this up. If this prediction is all done in silico, just analyzing old data sets, how do we make sure the AI isn't just, learning the biases from past medical practices? Couldn't that actually make health disparities worse if we apply it in the real world without thinking?
That's the absolute crucial question, and the sources are very clear on this. The predictive power is there, no doubt, but it's currently limited. For these algorithms to actually make people healthier, they need to clear 2 massive real-world hurdles. First, they absolutely have to be validated in proper clinical trials. Prospective, randomized trials, proving they work in real patient care, not just on old data. And second, you need effective treatments for the things they predict. Prediction alone doesn't help if you can't then intervene. Otherwise, it's just interesting research, not actual medical help.
Right, so prediction's the first step, but the real-world proof and having treatments available, that's essential. Still, there are some examples already moving beyond the lab, aren't there? Autonomous diagnostic systems getting into the clinic.
Precisely. We're seeing this with things like diabetic retinopathy. These are AI systems that can diagnose it autonomously. You don't need a specialist ophthalmologist right there. They're being tested in pivotal trials, even deployed in primary care offices. The AI looks at the retinal scan, figures out the severity, gives a quick diagnosis and referral. And for something like diabetic retinopathy, catching it early can literally save someone's sight. That's a direct impact, reducing disease burden, easing pressure on specialists.
And that shift into the clinic, it brings us to maybe the most surprising idea in this whole section. The sources call it deep medicine. It's this argument that AI, counterintuitively, could actually make healthcare feel more human again. How does that work? Automation leading to more empathy.
It does sound paradoxical, doesn't it? But think about the reality for doctors today. The sources describe it as a relentless shuffle. They're drowning in admin, in business pressures. Think about your own experience. Doctors spend so much time on bureaucratic tasks, chasing down data from different systems, dealing with insurance approvals, endless charting, clicking boxes on the computer, sometimes half their day.
Yeah, you feel that as a patient sometimes. You feel rushed, like they're looking at the screen more than you, like they're not fully present.
Exactly, because their time and mental energy are being eaten up by processing information, not by connecting with the person sitting opposite them. So the idea of deep medicine is using AI to automate that shuffle. Things like ambient clinical intelligence AI systems that just listen to the conversation, transcribe it, fill out the EHR automatically. That frees the doctor from the keyboard.
Okay. So the AI takes care of the data entry, the administrative slog, which gives the doctor back the time and maybe the mental space to actually slow down, make eye contact, listen properly.
Exactly. It restores the capacity for that human-to-human connection, for empathy, for just being present. The sources tell this really powerful story about a doctor, Dr. Kate Rowland. She was treating a man with a brain tumor, and throughout his treatment, he kept saying to her, "You don't know me. This is not who I am." Even after he passed away, she realized he was right. Her focus had been so split by all the system demands, treating the tumor, managing the data, that she hadn't truly connected with the person, the husband, the father.
And didn't she keep his business card for years as a reminder?
10 years, yeah. A constant reminder of that failure to be truly present. And that story really highlights something fundamental. Technology has limits. The human element is irreplaceable. The sources are really clear. No AI is ever going to truly know a person in that deep, emotional, human way. So the gift of AI here isn't replacing the doctor. It's giving them back the time and focus needed for real empathy by taking away the drudgery.
That's a really hopeful way to think about it. Rescuing the human element, not replacing it. And that idea of fixing systemic problems leads us nicely into the next huge area where AI offers hope: the planet's health, sustainability. When we look at climate change, AI seems poised to offer real alternatives to some of our most destructive practices, especially how we produce food.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at resource use and climate impact, our current food system is just a massive contributor. Factory farming in particular, it's incredibly resource-intensive land, water, and the greenhouse gases. The sources point out that farmed land animals account for over 11% of all annual greenhouse gas emissions from human activity.
11%. That's huge just from livestock. We definitely need a radical fix there. And the sources talk about two main AI-driven approaches. First up, vertical agriculture.
Right, vertical farming. It's basically an optimization challenge, which is perfect for AI. You have these AI systems managing everything, the exact light spectrum, tiny adjustments to nutrient delivery, water recycling, all with incredible precision. The goal is to maximize yield while slashing resource use and pollution. You get high-quality food, grown locally, often chemical-free, and it cuts down massively on transport emissions.
Makes sense. More efficient, less impact. The second one sounds even more radical, though. Cell-cultured meat, lab-grown meat. The sources mention a kind of triple benefit here, beyond just climate.
Yeah, it's compelling. Benefit one, potentially eliminating the need for the mass slaughter of, over 74 billion land animals every year. Just staggering numbers and the suffering involved. Benefit two, massively reducing the environmental damage, less deforestation for grazing, less toxic runoff from farms, fewer carbon emissions. And benefit three, which is really interesting, the potential to actually engineer the meat. Make it healthier, control the fat content, maybe even make it taste better, or create totally new textures.
Okay, that sounds almost too good to be true. A win for animals, the planet, and maybe even our health and taste buds. But where are we actually at with this? Can I, order an AI-designed, lab-grown steak tonight?
Not quite yet. The reality, according to the source material, is that the tech is pretty good now at replicating unstructured stuff, the ground beef, chicken nugget texture. But creating those complex structured pieces like a marbled steak, a filet mignon, that's still a major hurdle. It needs really advanced techniques like bioprinting, creating scaffolds for the cells. That's still very much in development.
Okay, so ground meat, yes. Fancy steak, TBD. Still, the potential is clearly there. And beyond food, AI's role in sustainability is broader too, right? Optimizing bigger systems.
Definitely. It's not just about these specific new products. Think about energy grids. AI is crucial for managing smart grids, predicting energy demand, integrating renewables like solar and wind, which are intermittent, making sure power gets where it needs to go with minimal waste. Just optimizing the grid reduces reliance on those dirty peaker plants that fire up during high demand. That's a huge planetary win right there.
Right. Now let's shift to something that often comes up in the risk discussions. Self-replicating tech.
Yeah.
We hear about gray goo, these runaway nanobots consuming everything. But the sources flip this. Talk about blue goo.
Yeah, the blue goo idea is fascinating. It's basically using the same principle, self-replication, but for defense. So if the nightmare is runaway gray goo, the solution proposed is a superior defensive self-replicating system. These blue goo nanobots would be specifically designed to hunt down and neutralize the harmful gray goo ones.
Okay, but wait. If they both self-replicate, what stops the blue goo from becoming a problem itself? Couldn't it go rogue too?
That's the key design constraint the sources emphasize. The defensive bots, the blue goo, must be built from special materials. Things that aren't common, maybe specific isotopes or rare earth elements or complex molecules that don't exist in nature easily. This stops them from being easily converted into gray goo, and it also limits their own replication if something goes wrong. Their fuel source, essentially, is limited and controlled.
Ah, so the safety is built into their very chemistry. Interesting. And the big optimistic idea here is?
It basically dismantles the assumption that the bad guys, the harmful tech, automatically have the advantage. The strategy is about getting there first, deploying these controlled defensive nanobots globally before any destructive gray goo can get started and cause a chain reaction. The optimism comes from the belief that a well-designed defense can actually be more controllable, more reliable than some hastily made destructive system. No fundamental reason why offense has to win.
Okay, from planetary defense to something maybe a bit more immediate. Our creativity, our learning, the arrival of things like DALL-E 2, these big generative AI models, that really shifted things, didn't it? They don't just analyze data, they create new stuff, images, text, music, that actually feels, well, it has an emotional impact. People got really excited.
Totally. That ability to generate novel content kicked off this whole era of human-AI collaboration. It's way beyond just using Google. There's this great anecdote in the sources about a writer described as a huge detective novel fan working with an AI called Historize.
Right, the storytelling AI. So how did that work? What did the AI do, and what did the human do?
Well, the AI, Historize, did the heavy lifting on the analytics side. It crunched tons of data user profiles, what plots people like before, narrative structures to figure out the most statistically engaging plotline for the intended audience. It basically optimized the story's framework for maximum interest based on patterns in the data.
So the AI built the optimized skeleton, the plot structure. But the human writer, they still did the really clever stuff.
Exactly. The writer specifically said their job was to design the key narrative tricks, the things designed to deliberately mislead the reader, the red herrings, the psychological gamesmanship that makes a detective story really work. And the writer pointed out that this kind of subtle manipulation, playing with audience expectations, the AI, quote, can't do that.
That seems like a really important difference. The AI is great at structure, at optimizing based on known patterns, but that human knack for intentional misdirection, for playing with what the audience thinks versus what's real, that seems unique, maybe tied to that idea of counterfactuals we discussed earlier.
I think so. It suggests that real creativity, the kind that surprises us, isn't just about recognizing patterns, which AI is brilliant at. It's also about imagining what isn't there, thinking about what could be, what the audience assumes.
Yeah.
That what-if thinking.
Which brings us neatly to education. AI here seems less about replacing teachers and more about personalizing the whole learning experience, right? Making sure knowledge actually sticks.
Yeah, it's way beyond just fancy tutorials. The sources talk about using social robots, physical robots as tutors and even companions in learning. They can adapt the pace, the content, to exactly what an individual student needs. And crucially, they can offer emotional support too, making learning feel less stressful, more engaging. It's about supporting the whole student, not just drilling them for tests.
And then there's the really ambitious goal, creating an artificial scientist. A machine that doesn't just use science, but actually discovers new knowledge.
That's the moonshot, really. It represents a huge leap. Current AI, like the DNNs we talked about, are amazing at prediction, figuring out what will happen based on past data. But an artificial scientist needs to understand why. It needs causal knowledge. Cause and effect.
And that's the big jump towards real general intelligence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Building a machine that gets the difference between these two things happen together and this thing causes that thing.
Exactly. And the way the sources suggest getting there is by building algorithms that mimic causal reasoning. Specifically, embedding the idea of counterfactuals, giving the machine the ability to ask, what if? What if I'd done this experiment differently? What if this factor hadn't been present?
Wow. That ability to simulate alternatives, things that didn't happen. We usually think of that as uniquely human. It's fundamental to science, but also to morality.
Yeah.
Right? Thinking about consequences.
Precisely. So the artificial scientist would use this kind of algorithmic what-if thinking to find completely new phenomena, come up with explanations for scientific puzzles, and even design its own experiments to test those causal links. By building in counterfactuals, the idea is that machines can tap into this powerful human way of thinking and go from just spotting patterns to actual deep self-directed discovery.
Okay, so we've covered health, the planet, creativity, science, but all of this relies on data.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of data. And right now, how we manage data, it's kind of a mess, isn't it? It causes a lot of anxiety, constant worries about misuse, theft, trying to figure out consent forms for dozens of apps.
The anxiety is totally justified because the current system is fundamentally broken. It's fragmented, insecure. So the sources propose a really radical change to fix this and actually unlock all that AI potential safely. The trusted data entity model.
A trusted data entity. So, like, a completely new way of handling our digital information, treating it like valuable property.
That's the core analogy they use. Think about it. You don't keep your life savings under the mattress, right? You put valuables in a bank vault. Use a brokerage for stocks. You trust a secure, specialized third party because the assets are too valuable or complex to manage alone. The trusted data entity, or TDE, would be like that, but for all your personal data, a secure digital vault or custodian.
Okay, so I give all my data to this TDE. How does it work in practice? Say a medical researcher needs anonymous data for one of those prediction models we talked about. What happens?
The TDE would use really advanced privacy techniques, things like homomorphic encryption, which lets you compute unencrypted data, or zero-knowledge proofs, which prove something is true without revealing the underlying data. So the researcher makes a request. The TDE checks if it aligns with the rules you've set. If yes, it performs the computation internally and gives the researcher only the results, say, the statistical correlation, never your raw identifiable data. It acts as a very sophisticated, privacy-preserving gatekeeper.
That sounds way more secure, but doesn't that just create a new massive center of power? This TDE knows everything about everyone. What stops it from becoming, Big Brother, even if it means well?
That's the absolute core governance challenge. The sources stress that the TDE must be fundamentally interest-aligned with you, the user. Its primary goal has to be your well-being. How you structure that is up for grabs. Maybe it's like a tightly regulated utility. Maybe it's an open-source system run by its users. Maybe it's built on a transparent blockchain where the rules are coded and visible. The exact form matters less than having unbreakable rules ensuring it always acts in the user's best interest, aiming for, as they put it, lasting happiness.
So if we could build that, the payoff is huge. We get all the amazing benefits of AI personalized medicine, better education, maybe optimized energy use tailored for our good, without the constant fear of our data being stolen or misused.
That's the vision, and it connects right back to the economics, those trillions being invested in AI. The TDE model is proposed as a way to make sure the immense value created actually benefits society broadly, leading to genuinely better living standards, rather than just concentrating wealth and power.
The sources also mentioned a kind of dual market helping with that.
Yeah, the idea that you'd have both proprietary closed-source AI tech, but also a really vibrant open-source AI market alongside it. We see this in other areas: open standards for the web, open-source software. It acts as a great leveler. It makes sure powerful tools and basic AI capabilities are widely available, preventing just a few giant companies from locking everything up.
And finally, on the topic of artificial general intelligence, AGI, that ultimate goal, the feeling seems to be shifting, doesn't it? Less if and more when.
That's definitely a strong thread in the material. You have prominent researchers, people who led huge projects like IBM Watson, saying things like, the fundamental path to AGI is basically known and achievable. They see it less as some deep scientific mystery we haven't solved and more as a massive engineering challenge. We have the pieces, now we need the investment and the effort to put them together correctly. It changes the conversation from, is it possible, to, okay, how quickly can we build it, and crucially, who gets to shape its goals?
So we started off talking about those dominant, often scary AI narratives. But what this deep dive into the hopeful visions really shows, I think, is that AI's ultimate power, whether it's for deep medicine or creating artificial scientists, it all comes down to how we design it, how it learns, how it stores knowledge, what goals we give it.
Absolutely. Real intelligence, the kind we're aiming for, isn't about being narrowly superhuman at one task. It's about flexibility, continuous learning, handling different kinds of information, using broad frameworks to connect knowledge. Technology might inevitably drift towards more complexity, as the sources say, but where that complexity takes us, that still seems very much up to us. Human choice matters.
And we kept coming back to counterfactuals, that human ability to ask what if, which drives science, drives morality. But there's the rub, isn't it? Our old brain, our basic instincts often push us towards short-term thinking, narrow gains. And when you combine that short-sightedness with planet-altering technology, that's where the danger lies.
Precisely. We've seen AI can be built to optimize for narrow profit, which happens a lot now. Or it could be deliberately engineered for broader societal wisdom, things like curing disease, fixing the climate, building trust with things like the TDE. The alignment problem, in the end, is really our alignment problem. What do we choose to optimize for?
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. If building AGI is becoming more of an engineering race, and if structures like a trusted data entity are vital for managing the risks and sharing the benefits, what policies do we need to push for? What personal choices, what political actions can you take to make sure those trillions being invested actually build these broad, survival-focused frameworks for wisdom? Instead of just fueling more short-sighted actions that optimize for narrow, immediate returns, potentially at everyone else's expense. Something to think about. Till next time, keep digging deeper.